breathing behind the shield, breathing, bracing. What is it? Why do we do it? How does it help us? Going over that real quick. It's going to take a little bit longer than typical, but it'll help. It'll help if you have some low back pain that's due to overextension. So really what we're kind of talking about is how can I contract or flex all the muscles in my trunk, not just my rectus abdominis right here, but my obliques that wrap around to the side, my spinal erectors, my QL, keep this whole cylinder tight, keep us obviously from rounding. Most people know you don't want to round when you're working out, but we also want to prevent overarching or overextension right in here. Some people have a natural tendency to be more hyperlordotic or overextended right here. I'm actually one of them. So like my butt comes out, I'm just kind of naturally in like a lower scissor, a lower cross. So when we breathe, we brace or breathe behind the shield and compress everything in here. What I'm doing is I'm flexing my trunk in a way that draws my ribs down and closes that upper part of the scissor. So I'm here and I flex my trunk in a way that I'm less opened up. So I flex down in here, and then everything in here is a little bit tight. Obviously not super tight right now because I'm talking in a fairly relaxed manner. If you're really, really tight in here, you really can't talk. So what can we do to teach ourselves to not be overextended, and why is that helpful? So I'll go over a breathing bracing like technique that we call breathing behind the shield. So breathing behind the shield is how can I contract my trunk, my core, in a way that draws the ribs down. I've got my butt clenched so my spine is fairly neutral, and then breathe at the same time. So the shield being the contraction of the core muscles, and then you breathe behind the shield to keep your spine protected. You will also generate more power or generate more force in the muscles that you're trying to target. So if you're doing like an overhead press, so if I unrack this bar and I go to press, a lot of people are going to overextend, overarch to get under it, right? So that would be an example where you see it. If you see someone do an ab wheel, right? This is an anti-extension core exercise. A lot of people don't realize that, but they do it in extension. So it only works as anti-extension if you can breathe behind the shield. So a lot of people, they go out like that and they overarch, but you want to keep locked in and prevent yourself from overarching. A single leg hip thrust or a glute bridge is another one where people will go into overextension. So they're here, and what they do is they drive their belly button up, they're overarched right here, and they also don't hit their glutes the way they want to. So let's go over how we work on that. And this takes a lot of focus, and you're not going to get it right away, and that's okay. You keep working on it. And if you're doing it right, especially at the beginning, you're almost going to feel drained from the amount of focus. You're going to feel like you're working almost too hard. You're probably not. That's probably what you need to be feeling. So we're going to lay on our back, right? We're right here. And so this is what, if I were just like laying and just breathing normal, talking, this is what my position looks like. My ribs come up, they flare is what we call that. We call it like a flared rib. So our ribs are poking out, they're flared, and then my abdomen comes down. So it comes up and then down. When I'm bracing, this, like the ribs come down, but at the same time, my rectus abdominis is like tightened. So you'll still see a little bit of a peak right here, but it's not because my ribs are poking out. So you'll see the rest of my abdomen, my core, like lock in, contracting, and this will like fill up a little bit, but I'm not flared up and then dropping down. You'll also, when you lay relaxed, you'll find that you have a natural gap. Most people know this. You've got a gap between your back and the floor from the natural curve of your spine. So your spine will curve up in that lumbar region, and you've got a natural gap. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to like flex our abdomen in a way that pulls the ribs down, right? Pulls the ribs down. I don't know if you can see that gap between my back and the floor. Pulls the ribs down and closes that gap at the same time. So we're here, okay? I'm not like crunching in. That's very important. We're not purposely rounding the spine. We're just locking in our trunk in a way that pulls the ribs down and closes that gap between our back and the floor. Okay, how do we do that? If you're new to this and you don't have good muscular control, which odds are you don't if you're new, that's normal. Why would you have good muscular control if you're new? So what you're going to do is if you breathe out every single ounce of air in your body, like really force all the air out of your body, you'll find that this kind of naturally happens. It will feel like difficult, like you're straining a little bit to get all that air out, and that's fine, that's normal. But as we do it, you'll notice the ribs come down and the gap between my back and the floor closes. So I'm here, right? And I breathe out. And when you breathe out, try to force air out through your teeth. You'll make a weird sound. Everyone gets silly and giggles about it, but it's okay. So we're here. And then watch my ribs and the gap between my back and the floor. And then as you relax, hopefully you notice the ribs come down. This kind of like actually tightens and comes up a little bit, not because I'm breathing in, but just because those muscles are contracting, and it looks like it's coming up more because the ribs are going down and the gap between my back and the floor closes. So usually I have people start with like 3 breaths out, where you just breathe out, get every single ounce of air out of your body, force it out, feel those muscles tightening, then just relax, take a regular breath in. Do that for 2 or 3 times so you feel like you got it. Poke yourself in your obliques and your sides. Make sure those are tight too. If you have a hard time getting those to tighten up and you can only tighten up your rectus abdominis, the 6-pack muscle, just poke yourself in the side, let your finger sink in, and then flex in a way where you're trying to push out those fingers, and then do your breaths again, and that should help get those obliques tightened. So again, we're here, okay? We're gonna take a regular, just force all the air out, get everything tight, then relax, regular breath in. We'll do that one more time, and then I'll show you how we progress. So we're out. And then just relax, regular breath in. That regular breath in, your chest is going to rise, your shoulders are going to shrug, and your ribs are going to flare again. Okay? Because most people are going to be breathing in through their chest. Now, what we're going to try to do, how we progress this, is we're going to breathe out. Everything's going to tighten. We're going to force all that air out like we were just doing. But then we're going to breathe in. And when we breathe in, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to use our diaphragm to breathe in while keeping everything tight right here. So again, the shield is the tight core muscles. We're trying to breathe behind that shield, right? So out, everything's tight. We're going to try to breathe in through our diaphragm. Now, one of the ways, if you're not used to breathing with your diaphragm, one of the visual cues or like what you should focus on or think about is trying to like draw air up through your groin, like the plunger on a syringe. You're pulling up. You're going to breathe in through your nose and draw in air through your sinuses. You can't actually draw air in through your sinuses, but if you try to draw air through your sinuses while simultaneously pulling air up through your groin, that'll get your diaphragm to turn on a little bit, and you'll keep the tightness, keep that shield up. It's hard. Most people are going to take a few sessions probably to be able to do this adequately. And you can also put your hand on about where you think your bladder would be, your lower abdomen. You can put a weight there. Some people like to do this with a kettlebell and watch the kettlebell come up and down. If you feel this tightening down here, then you're on the right track. So we're going to breathe out. Hold on, and then just watch my ribs. Again, they'll come down. You'll still see a little bit of a rise there, but you shouldn't see my shoulders shrug when I breathe in. You shouldn't see anything like that. Okay, so we breathe out. Then breath in. just like that. Okay, so again, I'm really trying to focus. It's hard to talk when you're doing that breath in, or when once you've breathed out, and keeping that shield up, keeping those trunk muscles flexed. But we breathe out, really focus, try to draw breath in, and feel this tighten down here even more. Again, not letting our chest rise a ton or our shoulders shrug at the same time. Okay, so that's breathing behind the shield. Once you do that, you can progress it even more to a breath behind the shield into a glute bridge. And that's what I like to have my athletes do. Is we learn the breathing behind the shield technique, the breathing and bracing technique, then we tie it in to something that requires some sort of movement, because there's no point in being able to breathe behind the shield only when you're laying down. You want to be able to take that, apply it to different movements, different lifts. So we'll breathe out, get everything set. We'll do a breath in, and then we'll breathe out again as we come up into a glute bridge. You want to breathe out as you come up into the bridge, especially when you're new to this, because the natural tendency is going to be to open up in those ribs, open like that spine, going over extension. So if you breathe out while you clench your glutes to come up, it's going to help keep you locked in a little bit easier. It requires a little bit less focus than coming up as you breathe in. So breathing behind the shield with a glute bridge, we're going to breathe out, get everything set, breathe in. Then we're going to breathe out and bridge. In and down. And then we'll breathe out again and come up again. Again, notice I might still not be coming up super high. That's okay. Part of what gets people into this problem in the first place is they focus on like, oh, I got to do a glute bridge. That means I have to get as high as I can. And what they end up doing is overarching the spine. They go into like a spinal bridge, really. They're driving their belly button up instead of trying to just get their hip bones up while keeping this locked in. So again, you breathe out, breathe in, get everything set, then breathe out again, come up. Once that is feeling pretty good, we can do the same thing into like an overhead extension. So you'd lay down, okay? You've got a weight or even just your hands, because similarly, just like when people try to do a glute bridge and they overarch, they drive their belly button up. If you're doing any sort of like overhead extension right here, people will break in their mid back, low back, and flare their ribs. So we want to be locked in, ribs down, and be able to go up into overhead extension and come back without breaking. So we can progress this up, overhead extension, breathing behind the shield. We set everything. In, draw up, breathe out. So as I breathe out, I go back, because that's the area, the part where you're most likely to overextend in your spine. And as I come back up to center, I breathe in, drawing up through the groin, using the diaphragm, not shrugging in my shoulders when I breathe. You can pair this with a single leg hip thrust, right? So I like to have athletes do your breathing bracing, and then if we've progressed past the glute bridge stage and the overhead extension with no weight stage, then I'll try to tie in the breathing behind the shield with a single leg glute bridge, getting to do the glute bridge without overextending. Maybe we'll do a weighted overhead extension, something like that. Once you get good at this, you won't have to strain and like focus quite as hard to get your ribs tucked, not flaring, and not overextending. So the idea isn't that every single rep you do on everything, you're like super straining and super focused. The idea is once you get good at this, those pathways between your brain and the muscles and your ability to do this are better, they're faster, and they require a lot less effort. So you can squat, you can overhead press, you can single leg hip thrust, you can do a ab rollout, ab wheel without killing yourself trying to think about not going to overextension, but you're able to do it with lower effort through more practice.